So my name's Becky. I come to Woodies with my husband David and my three youngest children. They're 7, 5 and 2. And I work in healthcare. My faith actually comes from childhood. So as a child and as a teenager, I had a very, very strong faith. And I didn't necessarily have the easiest of childhoods. My mum was admitted to a psychiatric unit for quite a period of time. My brother and my sister were in the care system, and I lost my dad to suicide. But in spite of those things, those challenges that I had in my life, my faith just got stronger and stronger. And then unfortunately, as a teenager, I had a situation here with church where I felt very disappointed, and I ended up walking away from church and also walking away very much from God at that point as well. And I think if you asked me at most points in my adult life what I believed, I'd probably say I was a spiritual person and not necessarily a religious person. But around 2008, I became very drawn to go back to church and to try church again. And I've been attending church on a semi-regular basis really since then, firstly in Wales and then in England since I moved here. I really wanted to find God in church, but if I'm honest, I found it really hard to find that. I found a lot of traditions and a lot of rituals, and sometimes it was calm and nice, and but actually finding God or finding Jesus or finding the Holy Spirit in church I found really difficult, which was a contrast to my everyday life, because in my everyday life I found that really easy. So when I worked in Wales, I worked in the NHS, and one of my roles was investigating adverse events. So my job was quite difficult in that I'd have to talk to families about things that had gone wrong and talk to members of staff about what had happened. And one of the things I used to do was stop at the beach every night on my way home, which was a mile from my house. And with the waves kind of crashing in and the wind on my skin, I found it really easy to pray and to let go of things that I needed to let go of from that day, and to find a degree of peace and be able to move forward and go home and not take everything with me. But in church, I was not really finding that, and I kept trying, I kept going back and trying. But I actually Googled alternative churches near me, and a few churches come up and Woodies come up, and I found you on YouTube, Woodies on YouTube, and started watching. So I knew that what happened at Woodies was very different from what I'd experienced previously in church. But I was really blown away from the first time we walked through the doors, how welcoming everybody was. And my children asked me in the middle of the week, "How many days till church, Mum?" And that's amazing. I think it speaks of the specialness of what's going on at Woodies and the community that's here. And I joked with my husband recently, and I said, I think I've met more Christians since attending Woodies than I've ever met in my entire life. And what I mean by that is that it's not about just coming to church on a Sunday, it's about how you live your life day to day. And that's always been really important to me. So as Jesus, I've always found very, very easy to connect with. To me, Jesus was radical. Jesus talked about how to live life in a very ethical way, talked about how to love one another, how to give of yourself, and how to also shake things up when they needed to be done. That needed to be done as well. But God, I found to be much more remote and difficult to reach, especially after the experience I had with church as a teenager. And I would say that it took a lot of processing for me as an adult to come to the understanding that actually what I saw in Jesus I could kind of expect from God as well. And coming to that gradual understanding led me to sort of start to develop a relationship with God again through prayer and through reading my Bible. I've had a very challenging few years actually. I'd mentioned, obviously I'd lost my dad to suicide as a teenager. But in the last few years I've also lost my mum, my father-in-law, who was the nearest thing that I had to a father figure in my life, because my husband and I have been together since we were 16 years old. My sister passed away, and at the end of last year my brother passed away as well, and he was the last of my remaining family, outside of my own husband and children. So that was extremely hard for me. And I also lost a little boy quite late in pregnancy. So I've had 5 years of loss. But in spite of that, I actually probably feel stronger than I have at any time in my life. I think my faith has only deepened over time, and it's been a gradual coming back from that step away I took as a teenager. I've had a gradual coming back over the years that kind of began with my pull to go back to church in 2008. I want to be baptised because I know that through my life God has asked me to do it repeatedly. It was something I wanted first as a teenager, and it didn't happen at that point. When I was back in Wales, I completed a baptism confirmation course with the church in Wales. And I always had the sense that it was for the spiritual, that baptism as an adult was for the spiritually mature Christian that really had their stuff together. And that felt very reinforced when I spoke to the priests in the church that I'd attended previously. And I wasn't sure that that's where I was at, or where I'd ever be at, if I was honest, completely honest. And then a few weeks after coming to Woodies, I picked up the baptism booklet and I read it. And I put it away, and a couple of days later I picked it up again and read it. And I think I started to get the sense for the first time that actually baptism is a step on a journey and not an end of itself, which was how I'd felt it to be previously. And since emailing and inquiring about baptism, I've very much deepened my practice with reading the Bible and praying. And I've really come to that feeling that, no, it is a step on my journey. And I think lots of us are probably on a journey, and it's not all, we've not necessarily got it all together, you know. And I also want to be baptised because Jesus didn't ask many things of us, but that was one of the key things he did ask us to do. In my life, I like to be quite in control of what happens. And surrendering is not necessarily a position that's very easy for me or very comfortable for me. But I think taking that step to surrender for baptism itself, and also for what will go on beyond that, is a really important thing that I need to do because God has asked me to do it so many times. And because I need to take that surrendering step and take that step of discomfort. And I really want to see where I end up being taken afterwards. So I'm really excited about it.